Hi there, it's Riikka Kovasin here with another video for A.B.Studio. This time I'm making a canvas of sorts. I'm using this chipboard frame as my base for the project, and I'm creating a background or a base for that using a piece of chipboard. So I'm tracing the inner of the frame to the chipboard and then later cutting it to the correct size. I'm also creating some layering elements for later use by using A.B.Studio stamps. I'm stamping a couple of Toadstools with a watermark ink and then embossing those with white embossing powder, and then some leaves using this fiery red embossing powder. I'm also using embossing powders to color this kind of a branch with berries. I'm using two different tones of embossing powder for that, a green one and then a red one. You can see the branch a little bit later in the video. Now I have the back piece cut to the correct size, and I'm attaching a piece of pattern paper on top. The paper is from Love for All Things and it's called Old Moment. I'm using collage medium to attach the paper to the chipboard base. Then I turn my attention to the frame piece itself. I'm using two colors of acrylic paints to color it. I'm first adding some bronze acrylic paint on top of the frame and then adding a mud colored brown and letting those two mix. I'm painting the whole surface using the two tones, and as they are acrylic they will dry very quickly. I don't need to dry the paint layer before adding a crackle layer on top. This is clear crackle, so it looks white when I apply it, but it dries clear. With crackle paste it's easier to let it air dry than to use a heat tool, because then you get those different sized cracks appearing. Next I'm then coloring the leaves and the toadstools I stamped earlier. For that I'm using watercolors. I'm mixing different autumn tones like yellow and orange and red in the leaves, but keep the color scheme a little bit more down to earth with the toadstools. After coloring them, I quickly dry them with a heat tool and then cut them loose. Now that the elements are cut loose, I then treat the edges using brown ink. Next I'm turning my attention to the center of the piece again, and I'm adding some effect paste through a stencil to the background. I'm kind of going for this mossy or grungy look with this green colored texture paste. I then, when the paste is still wet, add some craft glue around the edges and put the frame piece on top, and then let the project dry so the crackling will appear to the frame. Now that the project has had some time to dry, I then highlight the crackles using black acrylic. I'm going swiftly over the whole thing with the black acrylic and a wet brush, so it's a little bit diluted, the paint, and then I pick up a baby wipe and go over the project, thus erasing the paint from the raised areas but only it's gathering to the grooves. It may look quite drastic at first, but the end result is really nice, like this weathered old frame. I also add some paint touches to the center, kind of highlighting the shadow of the frame itself. Then it's time to start the actual composition. I'm first adding some old lace to the project, kind of a grounding element or a guide for me to build the main composition. I'm using heavy body gel medium as my adhesive at this stage because I want the base to be really sturdy. On top, I then start to layer the stamped elements together with some die cuts. I'm using foam tape here and there to make the composition quite dimensional. This time I didn't edit the composition that much away, so you can see almost the whole thing in here, only sped up. When I then have the main composition done, it's quite flat even though I've used foam tape to make it dimensional, but the elements themselves are quite flat. So I'm finishing the project with some actual nuts because those to me bring that extra element of texture and dimension. I add those in using just regular craft glue, and after that the project is done. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's a little bit longer than usual, but I wanted you to see the process as much as possible. If you liked the video, please consider subscribing, and I'm wishing you a very happy, colorful and sunny autumn. Thank you. See you again. Bye.